Today's episode might just open a doorway to something you've always sensed but never been able to describe. So first I'll ask you, have you ever walked into a space and immediately felt something? A sense of calm, clarity, alignment maybe, or maybe the opposite. That reaction is no accident. And in this conversation, we're exploring why it happens and how it can change the way we build, host, live, and succeed. I'm joined by the wonderful Valentina Cherida, a health and being architect who specializes in creating sacred spaces that honor the energetic essence of land. Her work blends ancient wisdom with modern design to support health, well-being, and deeper alignment physically, mentally, and spiritually. Valentina and I met unexpectedly, and our conversation stayed with me. In fact, it's what's inspired this episode. So today we explore what invisible energy really is and why it matters more than we realize. We also talk about how your built environment subtly influences your health, emotions, and success, and how dowsing, energy mapping, and sacred spatial design are being used to shape meaningful hospitality and aligned living. There's science behind this, yes, but also intuition, presence, and a deep call to reconnect with something we've collectively forgotten. If you've been feeling drawn to this topic, curious, lit up, even a little unsure, that's no accident either. As I always say, follow your curiosity and see where it leads. It might just be the nudge towards a more grounded, nourishing way of doing business for you, and of course, for living well. If you're dreaming of designing a retreat, a glamping space, or even your own home with more intention, energy, and soul, this is the episode for you. So let's dive in. Glamping and unique holiday rentals are surging in popularity with the growing desire of customers to book holidays that deliver an experience. They are also the new business of choice for those wanting to improve their work-life balance. So how do you build a strong business like this that gives you the life you need and a great investment? I'm Sarah Riley, and I want to share what I've discovered after being immersed in this industry for over 20 years to inspire you to find out more about what's going on. Welcome, this is the business of glamping and unique holiday rentals. Valentina, we had a chance encounter in Greece, which has led me down a path which has created excitement in me to continue with this line of inquiry. First of all, tell me a little bit about you, what you do, and how you help people.
Thank you so much for having me. So what I do is I'm an architect. I do architecture interior, but it's really very much focused on creating sacred spaces. It's focused on health and well-being. So all the work that I do, it goes from land energy dowsing. For example, people that buy a piece of land to build their home or to build their resort or hotel, office, whatever it is. To, for example, interior design, but again, based on integrating ancient wisdom and contemporary sciences to make spaces that are really aligned to the people that will live there, that are healthy, that can make us feel good. Because really, everything that I do is based on that principle that our built environment has a huge impact on our physical and mental and spiritual health. And this is something that we have forgotten throughout history. And so it's really bringing back a design practice that really can support our primitive needs, because like we have dietary needs, I feel like we also have spatial needs that at the moment are not really met. So I do help people and companies to create environments that can really support them at the best that is possible from a health perspective.
Lots of parts of the UK are overbuilt and oversaturated with people and buildings and concrete, but not where I live. And actually there's a lot of ancient knowledge, ancient history, and standing stones, all of these things which indicate that there is a very strong energy here. And so I kind of connect with that, and I've always connected with that. But for someone who isn't maybe quite so connected with the reason why getting in touch with the energy and our space and how it can affect our health and well-being, what would you say to someone who is struggling to understand how those things are connected?
So the way I usually explain it is the earth and the land are living beings, like we are. So our body is made of a physical part, a material part, and of a soul or subconscious, depending on what everyone believes. But we can all agree that there is something beyond in us, what we can touch and feel and hear and so on. So the concept of the land and the earth is exactly the same. Each piece of land comes with its own energy grids, with its own soul, its own spirit. So when I work on the land energy, I'm of course observe and work on the physical aspect of the land by building something as well, but also on the part that is more spiritual, hence checking all the energy grids, the meridians. So in the same way you would do acupuncture with a doctor on your body, or you would do a Reiki session or any type of other energy healing modality, you can compare this work to the land. So it's really healing of the land, connecting to the land. And that helps to create something that is truly connected to that spirit of the land. And when that happens, you have a very wonderful sense of alignment with everything. You feel more grounded when you live in these type of environments that have been built with this intention, with this type of work in the background. And this is very much how we have been building, for most of human existence, because throughout history, there's a lot of knowledge about dowsers, about land energy grids, and how different sites were assessed to decide where to build, how to build, and so on. So this is how I usually explain it.
Yeah, I feel a little bit like it's got a connection with feng shui. Am I right in thinking that it's similar to that ancient practice?
Yes, I mean the practice of classical feng shui it's dated maybe 4 or 5 thousand years ago, as far as we know, and it includes a part which is called geomancy, which is the assessment of the energy of the land before you do any feng shui audit, let's say, of that land or of the space or whatever you're doing. So yeah, in each culture that I've been fortunate enough to study and to learn from Indonesia to Canada to Africa, in the indigenous wisdom and ways of living on the land, there is always an aspect of land energy. So feng shui is more related to Asia and China, for example. But in any other culture, you will find similar way of living the land, just with different names.
You hear about it across lots of different cultures. They've got a way that they give back to the land and respect the land, so it respects them and the ancient ancestors and spirits, and it's all connected,
Yeah.
isn't it? I've heard a lot about Genius Loki, which is the spirit of the land. So is that the same thing? Is that a bit more specific to a set of principles within a key piece of land?
I guess maybe that's a way to call it. I'm not sure it's exactly the same thing, but there are some architects in the modern architecture movement. They talk about the genius Loci. I say Loci because I'm Italian, but I guess it's Loci in English. But yeah, they talk about that. So it's similar, but usually they don't refer to this type of work on the land. They talk about like a spirit of that place. Yeah.
It's interesting because I've spoken to lots of different people who design space. So yourself, an architect who designs everything from residential buildings to resorts, from treehouse builders to elaborate tent designers and things like that. And often the very best ones always say to me that when they are considering a structure in a piece of land, they have to visit the land, they have to sit with the land, and they have to just let the land almost speak to them. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something that they do intuitively. It's not something that they necessarily thought was the right thing to do. They just felt it's kind of the only way. And really, what you're talking about here is that actually they're connecting to something a bit more that maybe they don't even realize they're connecting with. But yet
Mm-hmm.
you've got tools and you've got mechanisms that help you make that connection. So, what does that look like in terms of when you actually go to a piece of land? What tools do you use? What methods do you use to help you understand those energies in a space?
So the first assessment that I do is always remote. So I don't go immediately on the land, but I print the map. Depending on how big is the land, it can be a big paper, a smaller paper, and I start dowsing on that map. I use pendulums of different types, and the pendulums are calibrated to certain energies, or some is just a yes and no answer. I mean, question and answer. And I always start with something that is called the Bovis biometer, which is a scale that gives me an indication on what is the average energy quality of the land. So I don't know if you're familiar with Hawkins. He does speak about the frequency of humans. So he measures, with muscle testing
Mm,
and dowsing as well, what is the average frequency of a person or of an object,
mm,
because it is believed, that we have this energy around us, which is our aura and so on. So that is measured in the same way I measure the energy of the land. That's the beginning, and it's done remotely. And then I start connecting, and when I douse, every land is different. So there is always different things happening when I connect remotely. And sometimes I find that the remote connection gives me even more information, and then I will go to the site, simply because I have no distractions. I don't have that, the smell that I smell on the land or what I see. Our brain immediately creates an idea, a judgment about something. So I find that I can connect better remotely, at least initially,
mm,
because I don't have that stimuli from the place,
mm,
which is something that, yeah, that I think it's really, I mean, I love it because I also been doing, I mean, since 15 years now, remote energy healing with some, people in other parts of the world. So I guess also this is something that works with me, because
mm,
I believe each dowser, once you practice and you learn and practice like anything else in life, you develop your own technique that is never identical to others. So this is my way. And then after the remote land energy is done, basically what the outcome is a map with a lot of tracing paper, different layers, different colors, different lines, nodes. And then I visit the land, and I do the same work of dowsing on the land. And sometimes, yes, I would sit in specific spots for some time. I would move around. I would douse different areas, and then I would take the coordinates of that point while I'm there, to maybe, because I want to make sure that I get the right location of a, I don't know, a geospiral, which is a very positive energy spiral in the land that we want to make sure we connect to with the design. And and then when I'm there, of course, there is a lot more, observations, and the smell, the nature that you see, or depending on, a lot of my lands are in the desertic areas, because I'm mostly based in the Middle East. So a lot of the lands I visit are also here. But still, it's, you feel the land and find, you know comparing what's on your remote audit compared to what's existing there, and then you get a lot of insights on what can be that energy or that spirit of the place, and how the space needs to be, basically. So this is like the initial process.
I find it absolutely fascinating. And I know that someone coming to this fresh, they probably will, what? What's that all about? I don't quite understand that, because we are so disconnected from something that we intuitively used to be able to do and understood and knew.
Yeah.
And yet now, because of the way that we are in the modern world, we are disconnected from it. But it's not to say that it doesn't exist. And actually, I've been doing a fair bit of research since we spoke and found quite a lot of scientific research papers which are proving that this is something that happens to, to all of us. We all have this capability to be able to do dowsing, to be able to connect to energies that we can't see. And particularly that when people are doing it, they are going into a state of meditation.
Yeah.
Their brain waves, which are measured when people have been doing this in the scientific research, they go into a state of meditation, but yet they're still conscious and alert and working, but their brain goes into that state. So it has a very significant impact on whoever the dowser is. And then that dowser is able to tap into an energy that others aren't necessarily tapping into. And then when you start talking about frequencies, and of course, we know the frequency of the earth, that's been scientifically proven, and other things have a frequency, and everything is vibrating with an energy. We're vibrating with an energy. If you had a strong microscope and you looked at your cells in your body and your skin, at the very core of that would be energy. So we're all energy beings on an energy planet in an energy atmosphere. And so for people to say, I don't believe this is true, I don't believe this works, it's mumbo jumbo or woo woo, I think actually they need to maybe open their minds to the fact there may be something more that we don't yet know.
Yes, and I mean, something came up in my mind as I'm preparing for a presentation that I'm giving next week about spaces that make you feel more creative and productive. So what would these spaces be like? And I will talk about this theory from neuroscience that explains that there's a theory of co-evolution. So how we and nature and animals, insects, everything has co-evolved throughout the centuries together. So there is this beautiful photo of the bird eating or taking the pollen, I guess, I don't know, from a flower. And it shows how, the shape of the beak is, matching the shape of the flower, because they kind of, there was an evolution together. And thinking that we've been, spending most of our existence in nature and moving through spaces rather than sitting in one space all day, that really made me think, if that type of environment has shaped us so much in so many centuries, what this environment we live in now. So these concrete buildings, these laptops, and that's where we sit. So we're always like this on the keyboard, and we're always like this on the phone. How is this shaping us? What's going to happen to us? We've lost any connection with our environment so much that that's why people really struggle to consider that this could be something that we're missing, or something that could add value to, a project or life of people and in general. I think that's why, because we're just completely disconnected from everything.
We call it's like Marmite. I don't know if you've ever tasted Marmite. Some people love Marmite or they hate Marmite. There's no in between. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
And I feel that this is a little bit the same. It's like Marmite. People either are interested and they're really kind of intrigued and want to find out more, or they're doing it, or they're just like, no, that's not real. That's mumbo jumbo, and definitely not going to get involved in that. But There's definitely something here. And the reason I say that, I've always been very interested in ancient structures, and I live in a place where there are loads of ancient structures. And I often ask myself, why did ancient people decide to build that thing there? And if you then measure it with tools which measure, different frequencies and different magnetic levels, you can see that it's clearly different in that area where the ancient people have placed the stone. And then when you look at the world and you look at those giant ancient structures, and they are all placed in very key locations on the earth, which are clearly thought through. It's done for a reason that we don't yet understand. But many talk about the fact that that is within the energy grid as well. So those locations are all part of this energy grid and ley lines and so on. And then if you look at things like, how could we have so many patterns that are so perfect? So we've got the golden ratio, the mathematical equation that brings about things like the petals, as you were talking, the shape of the beak on a bird and the shape of petals in nature, the shape of plants in nature. How is it that the moon is placed where it is exactly perfectly to make the earth possible for us to live on and habitable? If the moon wasn't that big in that specific place, the earth wouldn't be habitable because it would be moving so much and we'd have too many volatile situations going on earth, and we wouldn't be able, as species, humans wouldn't exist, and many natural things wouldn't exist, and nature wouldn't exist. So I find this all just incredible. It's like, it's just right, like the Goldilocks story. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right to make us a habitable earth and a species that's doing well in places where there are these magical energy systems. So what kind of benefits can somebody expect if they were using the land in the way it's supposed to be used, and they were connecting with the energies on the land in the right way? What kind of benefits can they expect from that?
Well, it depends really on what you're going to be doing on that land. For example, if we talk about homes or resorts or spaces for healing, which nowadays there is a lot, then what it would be, definitely there are certain energy points in certain areas of these lands that are very, very beneficial to support activities like, I don't know, meditation or wellness activities or community gatherings. So if you're looking to, let's say, create a space for community, then it's very important where you place it on that piece of land, because that energy that comes from below will really help gather the people together and create that feeling of belonging and wanting to be there. That's how powerful these points are. And just to give you an example, in the Roman times, centuries ago, they would place all the squares and the plazas in these energy points because they would want people to gather there and to be part of a community and to be, all together. So this is one example of the benefits. Then there is other areas that have less favorable energy, let's say, that is a bit more aggressive. And these points are called like geopathic stress areas, for example. And this is where the energy is very negative and you can feel it. It can be either because there has been some events in the past, so some emotions that are like entangled in that area. It could be because of some crossing of different energy grids together with underground water, mineral composition that create that energy that can be a zone or it can be a line depending. And what happens if you stay on top of it for too long? Like I start coughing. I can feel it immediately. Even if I do the dowsing remotely, I would start feeling my body responding to that energy. But for people, for example, if you place again like a healing place or a meditation space or even a bedroom, then people will not be able to sleep well. You will not be able to do meditation, to do other activities that you want to do because that energy is very, very strong. And it doesn't mean that everyone will feel it because, as you said before, not many people are aware of this, but our bodies can feel it. Because just because we're not aware of something, it doesn't mean that it's not affecting us. So what you might feel is not sleeping or just feeling restless or not, not in attuned to the place and what you're doing. So these are kind of the two opposites, let's say, the two. And then there is other areas where are like, average frequency, let's say, where, you can place anything else. So you wouldn't feel like a huge difference, let's say, in areas of the land where it's quite stable and more neutral. And and then all of these energies can be amplified through architecture and design. Because in history, the buildings were always like an extension of the earth energy, and everything was built in alignment to the energy grids. So by creating shapes and forms and using materials in these specific points, you can magnify or even neutralize and remedy certain energies or clear emotions from the past. So transform that energy of the land to align with the work that you're doing and also at the same time helping the land to find more balance, let's say. So this is generic things on how you could feel and what can happen basically.
So if somebody has already designed their space and it's already being used, and they may retrospectively want to just kind of see what's going on with the land and the energy of the land, and then they find that maybe they've put a structure in a place where there is a bit of stress energy, is there something that they can do, which is obviously they can't pick up that structure and move it, but is there something they can do to kind of dissipate that energy that isn't maybe so beneficial?
Yeah, there are some different remedies I use depending on what it is. I use different things, but the options are either is healing that place with a specific pendulum that I have that is made for healing imbalances. Otherwise, I use copper remedies made of copper in circular shape. Copper is a conductive material, so when you place it into like a round shape and it's like a twisted copper, it helps to like attract and contain and neutralize, let's say, unfavorable geopathic stress energies. Sometimes I use like sticks, also metal sticks or wooden sticks, like acupuncture, like I mean, I don't use the needles, but like longer elements to kind of fix some points on the land. Sometimes crystals and stones. But I have to say, like, if there is a very strong geopathic stress point into an existing structure, the best thing to do is to move away from it. So within the interior, maybe you cannot move the building and maybe you can rearrange the space inside as well. So not only, let's say, for example, once I had a client that she moved into a home and she couldn't sleep. She's a knowledgeable functional doctor. And, she eats very well. She sleeps well. She does everything you need to do to be healthy. And she was like, why I cannot sleep in this room? Can it be my gut? Can it be the hormones? Can it be like whatever? Then she tested all the other rooms of the house because she has 4 kids. So she tried all the rooms. She could sleep everywhere but in her room. So when I went, I found a geopathic stress point right under her bed. So what we did, the first thing I told her, you have to move away from it. So we rearranged the bedroom, moved the bed on the other side, and I implemented a copper remedy that has been there for a few weeks. And then that's it. So now she's been sleeping in a room fine and that's it. So I think it's important if it's a strong geopathic stress point, it's always better not to sleep on it, not to spend time in it too much. Either way, yeah.
So I've been dabbling in this space for a little while. Personally, I've been doing my own dowsing for almost like a hobby for years, but really just touching the very tip, the very surface. But I've found that the more I've done it, the more it's kind of opening me up to understanding it, if that makes sense. And the more I'm kind of intuitively thinking of things, and then it turns out that's correct. So it's almost like it's building my intuition and building my own natural radar and my natural mechanism for understanding which way I need to go and things that I need to do. Do you think that's connected, or is that just me?
No, I think it is. And also because, see, this type of work with dowsing, it's all about training and practice. And what I found, at least what I do and what I've been doing, is to really train my brain to stop thinking and just feel, because that's the difference. So when you start that process of, training the muscle to say, okay, don't think, just feel. And every day you do a little bit, then naturally your brain will be doing that without you telling it to do it. I mean, I'm no doctor or anything, but I just think it's very logical because the brain is a muscle. And it's like the same way I go to the gym and I train my muscles, you know how the muscles keep working after you finish your workout. It's known. So it should apply to the brain too. And that's what I found. So throughout the years, the more I would practice and the more I would practice this, thing of thinking, because as humans, and as we are born in these times now, in this period in this era, we are trained to always, you have to think, you have to be, smarter than that, you have to do everything by the book, and then you will be doing great. So for us to stop that type of pattern and train the brain to feel and stop thinking, it's not easy, because it's like creating a new pattern, new wiring in your brain that maybe it's not as developed. So I think it makes sense that then as you do that, you open up to other things because you're working more with the feel aspect rather than the thinking aspect.
What you said there really connected with me, actually, because when I was 38, I had a neck injury which created a clot which gave me a stroke. And thankfully, I managed to survive and thrive. And I was very, very lucky. I was one of the lucky ones. But as a result of that, I learned a lot about how the brain works and brain plasticity and how the brain develops and repairs and everything else. And what you said there about it's kind of rewiring almost, it's creating different connections. If you're doing something different, if you're connecting to a different energy, then the brain is going to respond to that. It's going to have brain plasticity. It's going to connect to new things. So that stands to reason that the feelings I'm having, that I'm connecting to energies more and more intuitively, is something that probably is happening through scientific mechanisms that we already know about. Do you think we're seeing a resurgence in this type of activity? Or would you call it a hobby? Would you call it a skill? Do you think we're seeing more and more of it?
Definitely. It's compared to when I started, there was nothing and no one, almost talking about anything. But I think now it's definitely, yes, becoming more and more common. I remember 8 years ago when I started talking about this type of work with some clients and companies and whoever I was meeting for work, it was very uncomfortable. They would be like, what are you talking about? Like, I almost couldn't mention it. But now if I go to a meeting to a new client and I explain, they would be like, oh, yes, that's exactly what I'm like, it's very different.
It's amazing.
So it has changed definitely since, years ago, which is good. And you find a lot of new techniques for healing coming up for our body or spirit. You know how we have Reiki and we have acupuncture and we have so many others that I cannot even name because there's so many, and each of them works more for certain people than others. Like it doesn't mean that everything works for everyone. They're all good, they're all valuable. But so in the same way, in the architectural field, this is what's happening now. There is this, popping up of things that I've never heard of before, because I think people are trying to look for a solution and explaining maybe what they're feeling and the way they want to work. Of course, it's nothing close to what's happening in more the wellness industry when it comes to, physical and spiritual health of the body. But also in architecture, there is a much more movement on this side, definitely.
So if someone is feeling that there might be something more, they just don't know what it is, they're kind of connecting to something, but they don't know where to go next. Someone who wants to build something, somebody who wants to maybe investigate their own land, or just somebody who's really intrigued about how this energy and dowsing might work, what would you recommend to them as a first step?
I mean, the first step that I always recommend is to just do some research and read a book about it, because then you can understand if you can relate to that, if it's for you or not. Because as for any other healing modalities, this is great work, but might not be the right fit in that moment for that person. I don't know. But I would say read about it, and then you might find, depending on the location where the land is, you might find that in that location you can, I don't know, call a dowser that is, in that area and that can help you with that process, or connect to even like a local priest if it's an area where there is the culture of and the tradition of having a priest that does blessings on the land and that can talk you through certain things, because each location is a bit different. So I would say to really explore and don't let the trends, trick you into like things that are not maybe good for
Yeah.
for what you're looking for, because there is also a lot of other things. But I would say, yeah, that would be my first thing. And also listen. I mean, what helps me as well is to listen to podcasts, because sometimes when you listen to some people, then you can relate and you can find the way, should I call it a dowser? Should I call it a feng shui master that can do a geomancy work as well? Or should I go into Vastu? Should I go into Balinese feng shui? Because I'm in Indonesia. I don't know. Like, there is a lot that can be done.
So are you officially now a master dowser?
I don't think I'm a master. No, I'm just a dowser. Yeah, I just love to do it, and I can see really the work and the benefits of that brings to people, or every project is really it just makes me happy because I can see the results and how things align. And so yeah, I've been doing it for, I mean, maybe I started 12 years ago, more or less. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I find it really fascinating. I'm really drawn to this, and particularly around energy, space, health, well-being, how that translates to the success of a business and the enjoyment of guests. There's just so much there, and there's a lot of science to prove that if we are thinking there's something more, and if we are feeling drawn to hearing about new techniques, such as the one we're sharing now, then there's a reason for that. There's a reason why that person is being drawn to that. There's a reason why they're being excited by it or curious about it. And so I always say, follow your curiosity and see where it takes you. So that's what I would urge people to do, to definitely follow that curiosity. And it's like a thread, it will lead you somewhere. And who knows where it's going to lead you. And so if somebody wants to speak to you and use your knowledge of architecture and also of dowsing and other things that you do, how could they get in touch with you?
So the website is one place, which is energyandspace.org. Also, we have an Instagram account, energy and space, but there is 2 dots in between, energy dot and dot space. But you will find that on the website anyway.
I think it's really intriguing. And so what do you think is going to come next for you?
Every year it's been a surprise, I have to say. Since I started, it's been developing very naturally. I didn't make really plans or anything specific. But I'm very excited with, a few projects that I have in different parts of the world, because that type of experience allows me also to learn a lot from other culture, other ancient ways of doing things in other parts of the world, so which is always very, very interesting. So that's what I would say is the most exciting thing, to see these projects develop.
Thank you so much, Valentina, for giving us your time today to share your amazing skills and new ways of thinking and new ways of working that maybe people haven't thought of. So I really appreciate it, and thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.